lately have been viewing with, I don't know, sort of new respect, yearning, the old, anti-discrimination standard. Shoe on the other foot. If what would we say if the racial shoe was on the other foot? So this summer, when there was the case of the mayor, I guess it was the mayor of Chicago, and I've heard nice things about the mayor of Chicago, but
Lori Lightfoot.
Yeah, but
I know what you're getting ready to say.
There was this incident, as I recall it, where I'm only going to speak to journalists of color. What would we say if the racial shoe was on the other foot? It seems to me that there is a very strong, I'd say for me, my default position is, even Steven, shoe on the other foot. It's a very simple, it's very straightforward. Maybe in certain circumstances, you could convince me that there should be, some other sort of standard. But
so let me say something, Randy, because Lori Lightfoot, I'm not defending her at all. I agree with you 100%. Was saying the press corps in the coverage of the mayoralty in Chicago is too white. I'm going to give preference to reporters of color. She wasn't saying reporters of color are going to report favorably on me, and I'm going to keep critics out of the room. I just think that point needs to be made. But I agree with you about the shoe on the other foot. And here's what I want to ask you. You're a professor at Harvard University. When I surveyed the data that had been collected by Discovery in the Harvard Students for Fair Admissions lawsuit, if you looked at the stratification of applicants by their academic credential, and you look not at the bottom or the top, but you looked in the middle, like at the 60th percentile, the 70th percentile, if you were an Asian applicant to Harvard and you had a middling academic profile, you had a single digit 5%, 6% chance of getting admitted. And if you were an African American and you had a middling academic profile, you had a 35, 40% chance of getting admitted to Harvard. Shoe on the other foot. I'm not the brightest, super smart kid, but I'm a pretty smart kid. I do perfectly well at the University of Massachusetts, the University of Illinois, and I probably could make it at Harvard as well. Give me a chance to join the elite of America. Shoe on the other foot. Why should a black kid have a 10 times greater chance of getting admitted to Harvard than a Chinese kid when we're talking about not super performers, but we're talking about well-rounded individuals, right? I mean, Harvard says we're not just looking at SAT scores, we're looking at, they're well-rounded Asian kids. There are just as many well-rounded Asian kids as there are well-rounded black kids in proportion. There's no reason for me to assume anything different from that. So if I take the logic of your statement, don't I have to have a great deal of sympathy for the Students for Fair Admissions side of that lawsuit?
Yes, you do. And as you know, I've been, throughout my adult life, a proponent of affirmative action, a defender of affirmative action. I'm still a defender of affirmative action with some asterisks. Actually, I guess it was last year, Glenn, you came up to Harvard and you spoke in a lecture series, and you said, policies have justifications. They have, they're born, they have justifications. They last, a while, and they do things. Oughtn't there be reconsiderations? I mean, that's why sometimes when people pass laws, they pass a law and they have a sunset provision. This law is going to be good for 10 years, and we'll come back in 10 years and take a look. Is it still good? I think that we need to rethink. I really do. I think we need to rethink For one thing, the racial demographics of the United States are different. The situation in 1970 in the aftermath of the Second Reconstruction is different in terms of the black middle class. Now we have a situation where we have an appreciable number of black people who've gone to fancy schools and are created careers, and their kids are going to fancy schools, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I am at this moment in a mood to rethink. There's another thing about the affirmative action issue, which has always been there, but it was put to the side for a good long time. That has to do with the question of class. So, actually early on, in the 1960s, I think of, Robert Allen, very left black nationalist who said, hey, this affirmative action, this is an opiate for the black middle class. It's a way to shut them up. And of course, he had a point. Now, I guess I want to say, where do we allocate our attention? Do we allocate the bulk of our attention to the, young person who would like to go to, let's say, the University of Michigan Law School, but do we fight for that person so that person can go to the University of Michigan Law School? If you're a plausible candidate for the University of Michigan Law School, you're doing very well. You've graduated from college. You've done well at college if you're a plausible candidate. So if you don't go to the University of Michigan Law School, maybe go to the Michigan State University Law School. Maybe you go to Case Western. Maybe you go to some other place. Question, how much do we focus on you and your cadre as opposed to the kids who graduate from, Detroit public schools and, they graduate and they're functionally illiterate. They don't go to any school. They don't go to community college. They don't go anywhere. And I think that we really do need to think about that. We need to think about, again, Glenn, things that you've talked about, the question of incentives. How do we incentivize people? Do you create a situation in which you, sort of let people think that they're going to get they're going to get that bump? And if you think that you're going to get that bump, maybe you don't dig as hard as you need to dig.
I didn't.
Really, you thought that way?
Oh yeah. I grew up knowing that black kids didn't have to try quite as hard. And I was right.
I just want to put some specificity on it. If you're a black kid, you go to a pretty good college, like John teaches at Columbia, that's a good one, or Harvard or Brown or one of these places, and you get a 3.25 grade point average. It's a B, not quite a B plus. And you graduate and you get, at the 60th percentile of test takers on the LSAT. You still got a decent chance of getting admitted at a lot of law schools. Probably not Yale, probably not Harvard, but you probably got a chance of getting into Michigan. If you're a white kid with that kind of a profile, you can forget about it. So what we're talking about is the pressure that's on kids who aspire to go to law school when they're making the decisions about allocating their time and their energies in their preparation and their acquisition of the kinds of skills that you need to succeed at law school. The last time I checked, I'm talking to a law professor, contracts toward civil procedure, constitutional law, these were some pretty tough, intellectually demanding, rigorous challenges to the young people who have to parse these cases and try to discern the subtle points of law and logic that are at play in these opinions and these doctrines as they develop and to apply them in new fact situations and things of this kind. This is intellectual work. It's not nothing. So when I see Sandra Sellers, the lecturer at the Georgetown Law Center who got caught on a hot mic saying that most of the kids at the bottom, or I see at the bottom of her class were black kids, and she lamented that, but it was the same year after year. When I see Amy Wax, who is vituperative to be sure, and is a rabble rouser, but nevertheless she reports that she has rarely seen kids performing at the top of their class at the University of Pennsylvania Law School, and nobody ever actually contradicts the factual assertions that she's made. Or when I hear partners saying, we know that we have to hire some of these associates, or when I look at the clerkship behavior of justices and judges who are selecting people who are going to be helping them actually write their opinions, and the people are underrepresented. I mean, I'm sorry, I ramble a little bit. Isn't there something corrupt and fraudulent? It's not just bad incentives. It leads to lying. It leads to humiliation. It undermines, and at Georgetown, again, forgive me for not finishing the sentence, it undermines our confidence in institutions when really there's not necessarily any warrant for that. At Georgetown, the faculty practically turns itself inside out, hunting for systemic racism to account for the fact that black kids are clustering at the bottom of the negotiation class that lecturer was teaching, when in fact they're using lower cutoffs on this LSAT and the GPA to admit the kids, and they know that performance in law school is correlated with those things, at least in the first year of the curriculum. So
Glenn,
it's worse than what you say.
Glenn, there